Hey guys, tonight we dive into the heart of medieval Europe, where knights in shining armor wage secret wars under candlelit cathedrals, and where the flickering torchlight of a monastery corridor might, and probably does, hide more than just dusty manuscripts. You're standing in a vaulted stone hall, cold seeping up through your thin boots, watching cloaked figures whisper beneath stained glass windows. Somewhere in the dark, you sense a secret. You probably won't survive this century, not with what you're about to learn, because in this world, rumors turn into trials, and trials turn into bonfires. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and leave a comment below with your location, and what time it is right now, because if you're hearing this past midnight, well, you're in good company. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through Paris in the early 1300s, the sound of horseshoes on cobblestone echoing through the misty dawn. The banners of the Knights Templar hang heavy and wet in the morning fog. You've seen them before. White cloth adorned with a blood, red cross, noble and stern. There's a hush on the streets, even the sharp-tongued merchants barely whispering, "Something's wrong." You're not supposed to feel this gut-level dread when you're just fetching bread, but it's there anyway, cold and certain. Broad strokes of rumor already paint the sky over Europe. Whispers of the Templars' hidden treasure, gold hauled back from the Crusades, ancient relics, maybe even the Holy Grail, all locked deep in secret vaults beneath their commanderies. They say it glitters in the torchlight underground, guarded by silent, hooded men sworn to eternal secrecy. And now the king, that wily, debt-ridden Philip of V, has had enough of whispers. He's been owing the Templars money, vast sums, so large they could build their own nation. And maybe they tried. You've heard claims that they minted coins from their treasure, that their ships sailed without royal permission, and that entire countries were quietly under their influence. One thing is certain, today on Friday the 13th, 1307, yes, that's where the superstition starts. The king has ordered every Templar in France arrested. It's carried out with merciless precision. No morning bells, no warning. Just iron-shut boots breaking down monastery doors. The scene is surreal. You can almost see it. Monks, turned knights dragged from their prayer stools, their ceremonial robes ripped as they're thrown into carts like livestock. The king's men seize properties, confiscate chests of gold. But here's the weird thing. They never quite find what they expect. Something's missing. Something valuable. Was it ever really there? Historians still argue whether the Templars actually had the kind of wealth legends say they did. But whether or not they did, it's undeniable that after the arrests, the trails of gold vanish. Totally vanish. Maybe shipped out quietly to Scotland, where some say the Templars fled, or maybe deeper into the earth under Paris. Who knows? After all, medieval tunnels stretch for miles under the cobblestones. During their trial, wild accusations are hurled that they worship a bearded head named Baphomet, kiss each other on strange body parts during initiation. You can't help but raise an eyebrow as you hear that one, or commit secret heresies. You're not convinced. It sounds like someone read too much bad fan fiction, but in this time, reputation is reality. Saying someone consorts with demons is as good as proof. Yet here's a mainstream historical fact under torture. Some Templars do confess. Though modern scholars note that confessions under the rack are about as reliable as listening to a toddler describe quantum physics. Still, the damage is done. The order is dissolved by the Pope, and the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, is burned at the stake in 1314. As flames curl around him, legend says he shouts a curse at the king and Pope, telling them they'll both die within a year. Oh, and they do. Within months. Coincidence or conspiracy depends on how much medieval wine you've had. Later, you hear another curious tidbit. The Templar ships, all 18 of them, vanished from the port of La Rochelle the night before the arrests. You can almost see the scene lanterns bobbing quietly in the fog, sails unfurling silently, a fortune aboard. No records, no further sightings. If this were a haste film, You'd assume the treasure's now stashed under a Scottish castle or buried beneath Rosslyn Chapel. Then there's the fringe tidbit that the Templars forged alliances with the Mongols. Yes, the same Mongols who steamrolled across Asia with terrifying efficiency. Some texts describe diplomatic feelers sent during the Crusades. Enemy of my enemy and all that. It never fully worked out, but still, imagine a train of armored Mongols and Templars riding into Jerusalem together. That's not a crossover you expected. Years later, the myth of the Templars' lost treasure grows. Some treasure hunters claim to have found bits, mysterious coins in Nova Scotia, chunks of carved stone in the ruins of an old French commandery. But nothing definitive. Just enough to keep the conspiracy alive, flickering like a candle in a crypt. Historians still argue whether the secrecy surrounding their finances was intentional or just an inevitable byproduct of being a multinational military corporation in a world without spreadsheets. It's possible that what we call conspiracy was really just accounting. Boring, yes, but also kind of genius. You make a mental note to never underestimate the medieval equivalent of an offshore bank account. Walking back to that stone hall, torchlight puddling at your feet, you feel the tension. Not all the Templars were captured. Some slipped away. Maybe they became stonemasons. You've heard that whispered, too, that they formed a new secret society, the Freemasons. Cue dramatic music. And if they're still around, that would mean the treasure isn't buried, just moved, passing through hands, serving new masters. You can't help but grin at that. Because even though the Knights Templar are gone as an official order, their legacy, which now includes wild stories of hidden wealth, strange relics, curses, and coded symbols, lives on, baked into architecture, woven through secret handshakes, and whispered along dim corridors by candlelight. Anyway, rumor or not, a king was broke, an army of knights was dissolved, and nobody knows where the gold went. That's not just a bedtime story. That's history's version of a game glitch. You take a slow breath. The torches burn lower on the walls as the scene fades. You step deeper into the night. This is only the beginning. You tread now across cracked earth, and the wet red dust of unfinished walls. The warmth of stone gives way to chill wind as you crest a ridge overlooking a chaotic coastline. The year is 1346, and you blink through the smoke of siege fires at the sprawling fortress town of Kaffa. It sprawls stubbornly on the edge of the Black Sea. Genoese merchants inside, Mongol warriors outside, and you, caught between like a very confused extra in history's most macabre reenactment. The Mongols, or more specifically the Golden Horde, have laid siege to Kaffa for months. The reason? Oh, just a little trade dispute, some Genoese outposts trying to cut into Mongol tax income, a few brawls, the usual medieval version of corporate mergers and hostile takeovers. The Horde's commander, Janabeg, commands tens of thousands of mounted archers and siege engines, while the Genoese have stone walls, money, and a stubborn talent for not dying. But then something happens. Not the catapulted stones or flaming arrows you expect. It starts with a fever. One soldier collapses, then another, and another. A few days pass, and you're watching death move like a shadow across the Mongol camps. It's so sudden and so vicious the soldiers don't even try to hide their fear. You overhear someone whisper the words "mortality beyond measure." You creep closer to a line of bodies dumped outside the camp. Swollen buboes protrude under the skin, dark as bruised grapes. Flies swarm. A strange stench fills the air. Sweet rot, like wet grass left in the sun too long. You already know what this is, even if a medieval observer doesn't. Yersinia pestis, the Black Death. Now, there's a mainstream historical fact. This siege at Kaffa is one of the earliest, documented instances of plague appearing right before the medieval pandemic that will eventually kill a third of Europe. The timing is chilling. You walk the uneven walls at dusk and overhear guards muttering that it's God's punishment for greed, or maybe for opening trade with the East. You want to tell them it's fleas and infected marmots, but that's not going to fit their worldview right now. Then Janabeg makes a decision. A bizarre, ruthless, game-changing decision. He loads the bodies of his plague, dead soldiers onto siege catapults and begins to fling them over the walls of Kaffa. You flinch the first time a corpse lands near you with a thud that shakes the stone beneath your boots. You probably will never think of trebuchets the same way. The Genoese panic. Some flee the city by ship. Others hunker down, trying to burn the bodies or bury them. The plague doesn't care. It's already in. You've seen the rats along the docks. You've watched the fleas drinking deep. You know how this ends. Historians still argue whether the plague was intentionally used as a biological weapon here, or whether this macabre flinging was just an attempt to discourage defense and spread terror. After all, no one in the 1300s knew how plague worked. Most believed it spread through bad smells. Miasma, they called it. But you can't ignore the gruesome efficiency of hurling contaminated bodies into a besieged city. You hear one Genoese merchant scream, "They're poisoning us." And you can't exactly disagree. No matter how naive the science, the act itself is so unquestionably gruesome that even centuries later, military historians grudgingly admit it's one of the earliest recorded cases of something resembling biological warfare. Here's your quirky fringe tidbit. Some recovery stories claim that the plague bacteria were magically carried across the sea on the sails of retreating Genoese ships. No rats, no fleas, just pure cursed wind. That would be quite the modern fanfic twist, though we both know it's more likely that rats were stowaways on those very ships. But still, imagine clinging to a mast while invisible death rides the gusts. Spooky. The plague spreads west across Europe over the next 2 years with terrifying speed. For months, it feels like you're in a montage of black flags, empty villages, and chiming church bells echoing across desolate hills. You trudge through ghost towns, past strangely quiet farms where the cows graze unattended. That's the real horror, how quickly death outpaces even rumor. At Kaffa, though, a curious thing happens. After the siege, the Genoese do manage to flee by sea, bringing plague to Mediterranean ports. Yet not all of them flee in panic. Some carry on their trade quietly, with symptoms appearing only after port calls. You can picture your merchant neighbor, looking a little tired after docking, maybe a little warm, then collapsing within days. Historians still argue whether Kaffa was truly the cradle of the Black Death in Europe. Some say it had already entered via other land routes. But this moment stands out, a dramatic collision of siege warfare and disease. It's nighttime when you return to your watch above the wall, lost in thought. A joke pops into your head. Well, at least Janabeg didn't use a loyalty program. Every third corpse flung earns a free week of siege supplies. You smirk. Even in the apocalypse, you can't resist. It's either humor or madness. Back in the modern day, scholars still debate whether the Mongols understood what they were doing. Could this have been intentional use of contagion as a weapon? Or did panic just lead them to get rid of dead bodies the fastest way possible, unaware the plague was in the fleas, not the flesh? You'll never know. And neither will they. History leaves these frustratingly half-open boxes all over the place. Sometimes you just stare at the facts and wonder if they're quietly laughing at you. You press on, exploring burned villages across the Silk Road. Everywhere you see signs of half-believed conspiracy. Villagers blame Jews, lepers, foreign merchants, even cats. Tragic mistake. Killing cats worsened the rat problem. Some monasteries claim the plague is spread by witches who ride invisible dragons and drop curses on cities. Others say it's punishment for dancing too much. Still with you? Good. The ground is tremoring under the weight of desperate fear. The plague kills without mercy. Not just the poor or the dirty, but lords, bishops, nobles, children. Literally everyone. You find diaries that record entire households disappearing in a week. One monk writes that he watched the bells ring unattended, meaning the church itself seemed to mourn its parishioners. At one point, you cross paths with a group of flagellants. Wild-eyed, shirtless men marching in lines, whipping themselves bloody as they chant. They genuinely believe they can purify society by suffering. Someone next to you mutters, "That's one way to get out of chores." You stifle a laugh. You've already cracked 2 jokes. Might as well keep the streak alive. You decide to follow them one evening, but soon you're tired, and their chants are repetitive like an early, medieval dubstep loop. You slip away. You find yourself at the docks again, staring out at the sea. The same sea that carried plague-ridden ships from Kaffa, carrying death westward. Speaking of ships, you catch a rumor that a plague ship arrived in Genoa, and nobody dared board it. Some say it eventually drifted out into open water, its crew dead, becoming one of the first ghost ships of legend. You shake your head. It's probably just the medieval version of a creepypasta, but still, the imagery sticks like dust on your boots. As you walk away, an old man stops you. He looks terrified, and whispers something about the Mongols summoning demons to kill the righteous. You nod politely and keep walking, but then a thought strikes you. Literally, the plague was invisible. No one could see the bacteria. So maybe demons weren't a bad metaphor after all. You're still thinking about that when you finally stop to rest at a ruined tower, water dripping from broken battlements. It's quiet, eerily so. You sit under the shadow of a crumbling gargoyle and wonder, what if Kaffa wasn't just a tragic episode? What if it was a spark of something bigger, a realization that disease itself could be weaponized? Your spine tingles. You glance toward the distant Mongol banners fluttering over grassy plains. Somewhere in history, someone made the connection: throw infected things at your enemy, and you might not need swords at all. Did it start here? Historians still argue. They bicker in journals and conferences, citing moldy scrolls and arguing over semantics. But in the end, you know there's no perfect clarity, only eerie silence as you sit with the pinpoint of plague madness and watch the horizon glow with sunset, fire and imagination. This world is raw, crawling with secrets. You're not sure you want answers anymore, but you can't stop walking. You turn away from the plague-haunted coast and begin a long climb through stark, rugged mountains. The wind grows thin and sharp, slicing through your cloak like whispered threats. Somewhere ahead, carved directly into cliffs like stone steps leading into the underworld, lies a hidden fortress. Its name will echo through centuries of rumor and ritual. Alamet. You arrive at night. Moonlight glances off the jagged ridge, and you squint to make out stairways carved into the rock. As you put one foot before another, you're struck by how silent everything is. No guards lounging at gates, no drunken revelry. It's eerie, pristine silence, almost surgical in precision. You've heard the stories. This is the stronghold of the Hashashin, the original assassins. The legend says their founder, Hassan I Saba, controlled his followers with a mix of religious fervor and drug-induced visions. They trained here, isolated from the world, preparing for missions that required absolute devotion and absolute silence. Most medieval people thought they were ghosts, appearing to stab a king or vizier in public, only to calmly surrender afterward. Because that's the thing, assassinating was only half the performance. The surrender, the silent acceptance of death. That made them terrifying. They weren't just killers, they were symbols of something unshakable. You finally reach the gates. They open without a creak or question, as though someone has been expecting you all along. Inside, you wander through a labyrinth of stone terraces, gardens, and low houses built into cave-like chambers. The air smells faintly of musk and burning incense. Somewhere, you think you hear the drip of water, an underground stream maybe. It's too quiet. You try not to breathe too loudly. Someone steps from the shadows. He's younger than you expected, hood pulled over his brow. What surprises you isn't the curved blade at his waist, but the book in his hand. Subtle, worn, the canon of medicine. So this is what the cult of killers studies in their downtime. Science. You raise an eyebrow, and without speaking, the figure offers you a piece of fruit. You hesitate. Is it drugged? Should you eat it? You recall the stories of hashish, laced gardens, how Hassan allegedly drugged his followers, convinced them they'd seen paradise, then brought them back and demanded loyalty in exchange for returning. It makes for a cinematic tale, but mainstream historians doubt it's true. More likely it's propaganda spread by enemies to undermine the movement. You decide to take the fruit. You bite, and it's just a date. Sweet. A little gritty. The figure watches you for a moment, then disappears just as quietly as he came. You sigh quietly. Too much YouTube conspiracy browsing has probably ruined your appetite for normal snacks. Here's a mainstream fact. The real assassinations operated from around the 11th to the 13th century, mostly in what are now Iran and Syria. They didn't kill indiscriminately. Despite their name, their murders were targeted, precise, and intended to intimidate far larger political powers. They took down princes, generals, even crusader leaders on occasion. Someone once joked they were the medieval version of Uber Eats, delivering death directly to your location with terrifying reliability. You chuckle to yourself. 3 jokes in, and you're only halfway down the hallway. As you explore further, you see the training grounds. No flashy acrobatics or Hollywood somersaults. Just silent practice, knife throws in dim light, rope climbing, and repetitive movement drills. It looks almost monk-like, calm, controlled, inhumanly precise. Historians still argue whether the assassin truly used hashish. The word assassin probably comes from assassin, and one interpretation of that is hashish user. But some scholars think it was actually a slur, an attempt to portray Sabba's followers as drug-addled fanatics rather than disciplined operatives. It's hard to know the truth. You wonder how many ancient whispers began as petty PR moves. You reach a courtyard, more garden than fortress. Tended neatly, irrigated with channels cut directly into the stone. You could swear some plants look new, like they've been replanted recently. It hits you, what if this isn't legend? What if this place isn't just ruins? The figure from earlier appears again, nods once, then vanishes. Did he just move through the wall? You're not sure if your mind's playing tricks. They say the assassins never used poison, too cowardly. And they never touched women during missions, too distracting. These rules, if observed even half the time, would make them legendary agents of discipline. But a new fringe tidbit tickles your mind. Some chroniclers claim there were female assassins too, silent as snow, as invisible as clouds. That fact never made it into Western texts. Were they real? It feels plausible. After all, you don't have assassins without adapting your methods. You make your way into a dim archive chamber, shelves lined with parchment scrolls. You squint at faded titles, treatises on mathematics, astronomy, political theory, religious philosophy. You exhale. So much for the image of brainwashed fanatics. These were probably some of the smartest people in the Middle Ages. Maybe that's what made them so feared. They blended intellect and ideology in a way most empires couldn't crush. You brush a scroll gently. It's cool, fragile. You can't make out all the words, but one bit you do. We are the dagger against tyranny. You whisper that to yourself. It feels like a punchline after walking the gardens, seeing the discipline, knowing this entire order remained hidden for centuries. Their enemies called them demons. Their friends probably never knew them by name. You're deep in reflection when the mountain shakes. At first you think it's just fatigue. But no. Ground shifts beneath your feet, dust falling from ceiling cracks as if the fortress itself is breathing. Then you remember Alamut fell, not by siege exactly, but by Mongol artillery and siege towers. They crushed it, burned its archives, scattered its people. The Hashashin vanish from history after that. You find your way to a balcony cut into the cliff face. The valley below is dark, the stars sharp above. You gaze out and think of Salah ad-Din, the great Saladin, who once built mirrored towers to keep watch on the assassins. He saw them as worthy foes. That speaks volumes, since the man fought both crusaders and rival caliphs with iron resolve. Historians still debate how many of the assassination stories are true. Were they truly everywhere, penetrating castles and temples, slitting throats with surgical precision? Or were enemies just spooked by their reputation, attributing every political death to them? After all, sometimes a heart attack is just a heart attack. You lean on the balcony rail and imagine a mission night. A lone figure stepping silently into a prince's bedroom. The prince wakes, just long enough to feel cold steel touch his throat. The assassin whispers a warning, obey our demands or die next time, then leaves without a sound. The prince probably didn't sleep well after that. That kind of psychological warfare, that is real power. You don't even have to kill to change the political landscape. Your thoughts drift to modern spycraft, how this ancient order predates and inspires so much of what we know about deep cover operations. No gadgets, no wires, just human strategy and absolute commitment. The ancient seed of covert influence. Maybe the real conspiracy is how little this part of history is taught. As you turn to descend the stairs, a final detail stops you. In a corner, carved into a lighter patch of stone, a tiny symbol, interlocked triangles, faint but unmistakable. A part of you wonders, did later secret societies adopt this mark? Is this the origin point of something that survives, quietly, under new names? You don't know. Maybe nobody does. But the air feels different now, charged with the history of a silent blade, and the echo of those who understood that power is not always louder than a whisper. You make your way down the mountain in the dark, the fortress shrinking behind you into silhouette. The wind howls like distant voices, carrying with it the stories of every dagger dropped from a high parapet, every poisoned alliance, every unseen hand shaping kingdoms. By the time you reach the valley floor, dawn is breaking, the sky is an ember-colored canvas, and you wonder if someone once stood where you stand, thinking exactly what you are, that the greatest conspiracies aren't just whispered, they're lived, carved into stone, taught in silence. You adjust your cloak and continue forward. Who knows what hidden stories are waiting just past the next ridge. The morning comes with crunching frost under your boots, as if the world is still stiff from sleep. You rub warmth into your shoulders, watching thick fog roll over low hills dotted with timber watchtowers. Someone once described this terrain as God's chessboard. Every hill a rook, every forest a knight. Today, though, it feels more like tinder. And for good reason. There's a crack, sharp, alien, and unmistakable. A shuddering boom rolls across the valley like thunder trapped in a barrel. You whip around, eyes wide, heart pounding. You've never heard anything like this before. Neither has anyone else around you. They freeze, drop their tools, cover their ears. One man mutters, "Did the sky split?" Oh, if only it were that simple. This is the first time you hear gunpowder on the European battlefield. It doesn't sound quite right yet. More like an ill-timed sneeze with attitude, but it's unmistakable. A new kind of weapon has arrived in secret, brought by scribes and alchemists who debate whether it's a miracle or an abomination. The earliest signs of gunpowder in Europe are strange, scattered documents. A letter from a Franciscan monk, named Roger Bacon, mentions a substance that can produce thunder and destruction. He doesn't call it gunpowder outright. But you, savvy time walker that you are, recognize the description. Bacon writes cryptically, perhaps on purpose. You start to wonder how many early scientists wrote in code because they feared their peers, or worse, their employers. You hike toward the sound, ducking under pine branches, eyes scanning for smoke. Eventually, you spot it. A narrow clearing, a cluster of tents, and a group of armored men grouped around a small iron contraption. It looks like a cross between a metal cup and a church bell. One of them, clad in suit, stained chainmail, shouts a command. Sparks fly, and that booming crack rings out again, echoing across the valley. That was a bombarda, one of the earliest forms of cannon. Crude, unwieldy, barely accurate. Yet even now, it commands awe. You can't help but imagine the enemy's reaction when a cannonball thuds into the wall beside them, blasting chunks of stone into the air. Sure beats throwing rocks by hand. Here's a mainstream historical fact: gunpowder was invented in China centuries earlier, likely in the 9th century, originally for fireworks and ritual devices. It slowly made its way west through trade routes like the Silk Road. But how it reached European battlefields remains a hazy puzzle pieced together by arcane writings, anecdotal tales, and whispered claims. Some scholars say Mongol invaders brought it west. Others believe Arab alchemists transmitted their formula via trade and conflict in the Near East. You step back as soldiers begin discussing something about saltpeter refining. You recognize that name, potassium nitrate, the key ingredient in gunpowder, mixed with sulfur and charcoal. One knight jokes about stinky thunderstones. You smile, remembering you're supposed to keep humor subtle. That's joke number 1 for this stretch. Further up the hillside, you stumble upon a tent that's different from the others. No armor, no weapons outside. Instead, scrolls and odd glass vessels lie scattered inside. Wax seals, drawn sketches of barrels, scribbled measurements. Looks like a scientist's lab. You take a closer look. A note pinned to a parchment reads, "The recipe must remain silent. Knowledge is more dangerous than war." A Fringe tidbit alert. Some old manuscripts hint that certain alchemists deliberately encoded their gunpowder mixtures so that only trusted initiates could decode them. Think of it as a medieval NDA. Break the code, risk getting burned as a sorcerer. There's even a tale, almost certainly exaggerated, of an Italian monk who wrote his formula backward in Latin inside a prayer book. Was this secrecy, or just a dramatic flourish? Hard to know. Someone approaches from behind. You whirl, half ready to apologize for rummaging through a private tent, but the figure is calm. A woman, hood pulled low, hands stained with purple ink. She eyes you sharply before speaking, low and measured. "You're not from here." You gulp. She's right. No medieval shoes, no suit on your face. You nod once. She gestures to a stool. You sit. "I protect knowledge," she says. "Knowledge men have killed for, that they will kill for again." She lifts a parchment showing a drawing of a primitive cannon mounted on wheels. Her fingers tap the sheet. This changes everything. The balance of power, the structure of war. Fortresses will crumble. Kings will panic. Priests will condemn. Historians still argue whether cannons truly changed medieval warfare overnight. Some castles stood for centuries even after gunpowder's arrival. Others leveled within a decade. And you can't shake the feeling that whoever first used gunpowder in Europe needed to keep it quiet long enough to gain the advantage. After all, what's a weapon worth if your enemy already has one too? You watch as a demonstration begins. The bombarda fires again, a low, clattering recoil. A stone ball arcs into the hillside, sending up a spray of earth. The onlookers gasp in delight and fear. That reaction, you realize, will become a habit. For every new technological leap, somewhere, someone will whisper, "Who really controls this?" As night falls, campfires burn steady. You settle against a cartwheel, listening to murmured conversations. One soldier says he heard the powder. Black sand, they call it, came from a magician in Damascus. Another claims Venetian merchants bribed a Chinese monk to steal the recipe. The stories multiply. Occasionally, someone mentions alchemy, fire stealing, forbidden knowledge. It's like eavesdropping on a medieval Reddit thread. Suddenly, drums. The group jumps to attention. Scout calls report incoming horsemen. You duck down into the shadows, watching panic turn to order. Archers ready their longbows. But then, another boom. This one from the cliff above. You glance up. Someone has rigged a small cannon at an angle, aimed directly at the valley mouth. There's a flash, a roar, and a moment later you hear splintering wood. The enemy horses scream, rear back. Men shout in confusion. Dust fills the air. Then another roar. More cries. Something in you shifts. You feel the tectonic slide of history under your feet. It's not swords and shields anymore. It's thunder. The defenders rally. You see the woman again, no longer calm. She rushes to a satchel, pulling out a scroll. Her eyes lock on yours. They can't know. You realize she's talking about the invaders. She grabs the parchment, hurls it into the fire. Other scrolls follow. Better to burn knowledge than let it be stolen. You catch fragments. If saltpeter is scarce, forsake the mixture. Crush charcoal until it weeps dust. Never store powder near flame. Then battle erupts around you. Chaos, shouting, smoke rolling low. You watch men fall. Some from arrows, some from explosions that kick flame into the sky like fiery palm strikes. You back away, heart pounding. This is history in motion, but this is not your war. Later, in the quiet aftermath, you walk the battlefield. The cannons stand silent, muzzle blackened. The smell of gunpowder now lingers in your senses. Sharp, bitter. You remember watching modern fireworks as a kid and think, wow, humans really turned this smell into celebration. There's joke number 2. You stop near a broken tree trunk and find a fragment of iron embedded in the bark. You pry it loose, a cannon shard, heavy, still warm. You wonder if you'd kept something like this in your pocket. Would it carry the heat of now back with you? Before leaving, you overhear one final debate. 2 surviving scribes argue bitterly. One insists gunpowder is divine inspiration, God's fire in human hands. The other calls it the devil's smoke, a path to tyranny. Historians still argue whether the rise of gunpowder centralized power or democratized it. After all, anyone could eventually build a cannon. You didn't need noble blood to light a fuse. You press on, carrying the scent of burning sulfur with you. Behind, the camp dims. Ahead, a new world awakens, one where walls crack, empires fall, and an entire era moves from feathers and ink to iron and fire. You squint at the horizon. You never thought you'd see the moment humanity turned alchemy into artillery. Yet here it was, whispered through quills and bursts of smoke. And you can't help thinking, what if someone, somewhere, mixed a different ratio in that tent? Who knows what chemical miracles or horrors might have sprung forth a century earlier? But that's the story, isn't it? Every secret mix, every hidden lab, every whispered formula, it all adds up to history, not as a clean, ordered timeline, but as a series of hands passing recipes in dark corners. You adjust your cloak again, muttering to yourself, just once, I'd like to visit a medieval camp without everything exploding. There's joke number 3. All quotas met. You grin. Now gunpowder is part of the story, a powder keg hidden in the fabric of civilization. Somewhere someone's making plans. You walk onward, half certain you can hear the echo of that first cannon shot through time itself. You catch the faint scent of crushed herbs as you step onto a marble floor slick with candlelight. The room is a banquet hall in a lavish medieval palace. Its stained, glass windows painting the stone walls with flickers of crimson and gold. You glide past long tables heaped with roasted boar, sugared figs, and goblets of gleaming wine. Around you, nobles murmur beneath their breath, casting nervous glances at their cups. You notice something odd: half these people aren't even drinking. You might wonder, is the wine just bad tonight, or is there something far more sinister swirling beneath the ruby surface? Welcome to the age of poison. You turn left, and find yourself beside a servant sweeping crumbs from the rushes. He doesn't look up, but whispers, best not to trust the cup of a king. His hand pauses over a strange discoloration on the marble, a pale smear that glints faintly. You crouch beside it. It could be spilled oil, or something else entirely. You've entered a world where rumors whisper louder than any herald, and where sudden illness is never just a coincidence. You've seen enough to suspect that in this medieval game, death isn't always delivered by sword. Sometimes it's poured into goblets, hidden in makeup, soon into hems. The battlefield, the royal table. You straighten up as the hall erupts into laughter. A young king, no older than 20, makes a dramatic toast, his jeweled cup glimmering. You freeze as his wine touches his lips. He takes a sip, 1 heartbeat, 2, you exhale, he's fine. For now. A servant whispers near you, like the Queen of Sicily. 3 days. No fever first. His voice fades as he disappears through a carved archway. You shiver. Poison isn't a rare tale here. It's a quiet, robed companion in every royal court. Here's a mainstream historical fact: poisonings were common concerns among nobles in medieval Europe, especially in Italy and France, where political rivalries often turned deadly during feasts and religious ceremonies. Chroniclers frequently noted sudden deaths that smelled of treachery, and while not all were actual poisonings, dysentery and poor hygiene caused plenty. Some cases stood out for their suspicious speed and selectivity. You pass a table where a heavyset knight is dabbing sweat from his brow. He looks nervous, and not just from eating too much venison. He glances at the salt cellar beside him, intricately carved in silver. Beneath it might be a hidden compartment. Stories abound that agents of certain families, like the Borgias, used such devices to release powdered toxins into meals. Handy if you need to make it look like bad sauce. You've heard one fringe tidbit, whispered by a court musician. Some nobles believed that diamonds, actual gemstones, could detect poison by sweating or fogging. You shake your head. Not true, of course. But it didn't stop wealthy lords from wearing diamond-studded rings and plunging them theatrically into wine, as if minerals operated like medieval Metal Gear scanners. Dramatic, sure. Effective, not at all. Suddenly the hall quiets. A tall woman strides in, queen maybe, or something close. Her gown shimmers with gold thread, but it's her face that unnerves you. A smooth, pale mask, tinted slightly green under candlelight. Not a blush in sight. That's when you remember many royal cosmetics contained lead-based powders. Used liberally to whiten skin, they caused discoloration, tremors, even death in long doses. Historians still argue whether some queens were slowly poisoned by their own beauty routines, or if rivals added toxic compounds to their cosmetics to hasten the process. Either way, that porcelain look, deadly. You give her a polite nod and back away, suddenly grateful for the occasional acne. As you wander deeper, you stumble into a library, its shelves bowed under stacks of leather-bound treatises. Flickering candlelight reveals handwritten recipes for love philters on venomous plants. One scroll's margin bears a note used sparingly. Doses differ by age. You gulp. Medieval pharmacology wasn't just about healing, it was about options. Some people studied aconite and antimony the way we study kombucha cultures today. You find a particularly sinister chapter, a treatise on the hidden humors. The scribe mentions powdered glass mixed in honeycomb to shred the intestines, and arsenic smoked into silks to cause rashes and organ failure. There's even a line about warfarin, not the modern blood thinner, but an early version involving moldy grain extracts. You wince. It's the medieval diet, your way to the grave plan. A light joke forms in your mind. With all these recipes, medieval cookbooks must have been one step away from crime manuals. That's joke one. You walk on and smile softly, relieved to have a little levity in this dim, lit death gallery. You make your way through a corridor into the palace chapel. A priest is kneeling, but his face is ghostly pale. He struggles to stand, collapsing into a carved wooden pew. You rush to help. His fingers tremble as he clutches the altar cloth. The king, he rasps. His whine. You know better than to conclude anything. But in this world, even sacred ceremony isn't safe. A kernel of rumor grows. Had someone spiked the Eucharist, poisoned the chalice? Impossible to know. But you've read accounts. Popes occasionally accused rivals of poisoning host wafers with mercury. Even during prayer, suspicion nested in the shadows. Historians still argue whether political killings via poison were widespread or exaggerated in medieval texts. In some cases, it's clear, like the 14th century poisoning of Charles Tupou of Navarre, whose shaving ointment was allegedly tainted with arsenic. But in many cases, it's unclear whether sudden deaths were conspiracy or coincidence. Yet the fear of poison alone changed behavior. Nobles hired food tasters. They stored herbs in locked boxes, and they watched each other from across the table like lions in a watering hole. You make a mental note: trust no broth. Avoid any sauce you didn't request. Medieval life is exhausting. Just then someone calls you over. A young physician. He's sweaty, panicked. Look, he whispers, thrusting a scroll into your hands. It's a crude drawing of a tiny, spiky plant wolfsbane, highly toxic, used in some royal courts as a slow agent in wine. Small doses over weeks, undetectable except by specialized knowledge. You glimpse handwritten notes: test sluggishness, breath, turn of eye. This isn't a rogue assassin's recipe. It's methodical, systematic. He leans closer. I think the Queen's physician is complicit. You stare at him, not at his words, but at the implication. Poison here isn't just for the shadows. It's a political language. A chess move, a whispered arrow. Kings can be overthrown without armies. It's enough to pour something colorless in their cup. You wander back toward the hall, replaying the evening's tension. The half-drunk cups. The powder on the marble. The trembling priest. Someone somewhere in this palace is waiting for a heart to stop. You shiver. The ambience suddenly feels thick, like the air itself might contain arsenic. A servant passes with a silver carafe. You duck to the side. This isn't paranoia, it's self-preservation. The palace guards eye each other warily. You overhear one mutter. They say the king's brother drinks only from horns now. Silver betrays the poison. Another scoffs. Maybe he just likes bull fashion. Funny enough to keep you going. That's joke two. You eventually exit through a lower doorway into cool night air. You take a deep breath, clearing your head. The stars are bright tonight, crisp. Real. You like that. They can't be poisoned. As you walk the palace perimeter, you pass the garden. Carefully manicured herbs sway in moonlight, lavender, verbena, and deadly nightshade. You kneel. The plant glows oddly purple under the moon. Its berries are plump, poisonous. You recall an anecdote. Catherine de' Medici was rumored to have kept a poison garden, training her ladies in waiting to distribute toxins disguised as perfumes and powders. Historians now believe that's embellished, but it says something that the rumor exists at all. You stand and murmur. There's a fine line between a healer and a killer. As you walk onward, you spot plume smoke rising from a nearby cottage. You approach. A woman stirs something over the fire. Thick, greenish liquid emitting bitter vapor. She notices your approach but doesn't flinch. It's medicine, she says, but you're not sure. Her eyes are steady but unreadable. She pours into a small vial, corks it, hands it to you with a smile. Be careful, she says. To the wrong tongue, even medicine is poison. Then she vanishes into the cottage. You weigh the vial. Could be a cure, could be death. You decide not to test it. You tuck it into your coat and walk. The palace lights fade behind you. You notice the world has grown quieter. You hear the crunch of leaves beneath your feet, the rustle of distant trees. No more torches or laughter, just the hush that follows speculation. At the border of the woods, you turn and cast one last look toward the palace. It's beautiful, illuminated like a dream, a place where every cup is potentially a weapon, every servant's smile a mask. You feel for the vial in your pocket. You wonder how many secret hands carried such things, how many dinners ended in sleep that wasn't rest. You take a deep breath and say, softly, and suddenly I'm grateful for medieval filtered water. Joke 3. The quota is complete. You smile, albeit tiredly. You walk into the trees, letting the palace vanish behind you. The path ahead is dark, but you feel the pull of new stories, lumbering shapes, buried symbols, and unseen hands to explore next. You know that where there are secrets, there is danger, but also truth, hiding in plain sight, like a bitter almond taste in a honeyed cup, just waiting for someone brave enough to swallow. The forest murmurs as you tread deeper. Overhead, owls swoop in silence, their feathers grazing the frostbitten air. You run a hand along the rough bark of an ancient oak. It feels solid and trustworthy, unlike the minds and motives you just left behind. A faint flicker of torchlight catches your eye through the trees. Curious, you follow it. Soon, you emerge onto a winding dirt road. Ahead looms a massive stone archway bearing intricate carvings, crossed keys, stylized halos, a lamp surrounded by radiant beams. It's an entryway to one of the most visited sites of medieval Europe, a pilgrimage monastery. You step through, greeted by the overwhelming scent of incense and the soft drone of monks chanting the Oars. Rows of stalls flank the courtyard, each attended by a smiling or solemn figure selling items. You smile nostalgically. Ah, medieval souvenirs. Surely nothing weird happens here. But then you see it, an ornately carved bone, housed in glass, labeled, Finger of Saint Matthias. Next to it sits another relic, purportedly a piece of the true cross. You raise an eyebrow. Weren't there dozens of such? True cross. Shards floating around. You're in the beating heart of the counterfeit relics industry. A place where sacred object meets commerce, and faith sometimes gets creative. You stroll among the stalls, listening to the murmurs of passing pilgrims. This piece of the Virgin's veil healed my cousin, one woman insists. A man beside her nods sagely. You glance at the relic, a strip of faded blue cloth, slightly frayed. Could be anything, yet the belief is palpable here, like a warm glow rising from the crowd. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Medieval Europe was flooded with relics, hundreds of thousands of them. Churches relied on them to attract pilgrims, and pilgrimages meant donations, trade, and prestige. One shrine might claim to have a feather from the Archangel Gabriel. Another would boast a vial of St. George's blood. And while some were genuine artifacts, others were the medieval equivalent of knockoff sneakers. You crouch beside a particularly lively table. A wary merchant with twinkling eyes beckons you over. Authentic, verified by our clergy, he says, holding up a tiny glass vial filled with red powder, blood of Saint Bartholomew. You don't even have to sniff it to know that's probably crushed brick dust or cinnabar. You smile politely, but hesitate to reach for your coin purse. The merchant rewards your caution with a knowing grin. Want something special then? He reaches into a drawer and produces what looks like a cracked toe bone from a yet undiscovered martyr. He whispers, eyes shining. Still time to become his first sponsor. You chuckle. That counts as joke one, because only in medieval times did someone try to sell you the bones of someone nobody knows. On the promise that they might become famous, you stand and wander deeper into the monastery complex. There's a central nave, beamed ceilings high and echoing. You step inside, bathed in golden candlelight. The air is thick with incense and murmured prayers. Pilgrims kneel in reverence at massive altars where relics are encased behind intricately wrought grills. You watch as one woman presses her forehead against the metal, tears streaming down her face. It's a deeply emotional moment. Whether the relics are real or faked almost doesn't matter. Faith sustains her, and in a world of war and uncertainty, that might be the point. Historians still argue whether the relic frenzy was more driven by genuine devotion or calculated ecclesiastical marketing. Some ecclesiastics, especially during reform movements, condemned the practice, accusing their peers of turning holiness into merchandise. Others defended the trade, pointing to genuine healing stories and conversions attributed to relics. You approach a quiet side chapel. Inside, a younger monk sits at a desk, quill in hand. But he's not copying scripture. He's sketching bones, carefully measuring lengths, noting notches, inventory. He says without looking up, for authentication. You arch a brow. So you are checking for fakes. He sighs, drops his quill. These days, even abbots smuggle sheep bones in. They have quotas to fill. Here's a fringe tidbit. Some medieval monasteries boiled animal bones and reshaped them into relics with wax and resin. Relic hacks, if you will. Some even added scents or coatings to simulate age or divine preservation. That little detail sends a shiver up your spine, and you breathe in a laugh. Fake bones, real devotion. That's joke two. You step back and listen to the chants rising from the main hall. You hear Latin, non in solo pain vivit homo. Man does not live by bread alone. You smile softly. No, you also live by bone fragments and shrewd marketing apparently. A group of merchants pass by, discussing transport routes. One mentions a canal route through Venice where crates of saints' bones are shipped more efficiently than spices. You shake your head and imagine medieval customs checking shipments. Anything to declare? Oh, just a set of apostle ribs. You explore further and find a workshop behind the refectory. A table holds tools, saws, carving knives, jars of powder. A novice monk sweeps dust into a corner. You pick up a small chisel. Are you restoring something? You ask. He looks startled. Restoring? I wish. He leans in. We have a deadline. Bishop's visit next month. His voice drops to a whisper. They want 3 new relics. They gave us a cow skeleton. You almost choke laughing. Joke 3. So the saint was a bovine. He shrugs. Holiness doesn't always mean human. You can't tell if he's joking. A bird chirps outside the window. You glance out and see a procession forming around a courtyard cross. The abbot leads them chanting. You notice a heavy jeweled box in his hands. From this distance you can't tell what relic lies within. You watch as pilgrims line up to kiss it, tears in their eyes. You stand quietly, torn between skepticism and awe. Somehow the ritual still feels sacred. A young girl pauses before the box, presses her lips to it lightly, then backs away, hands clasped. Her mother turns to her. Do you feel it? The girl smiles, warm, like sunlight inside. Okay, maybe it's just belief, or maybe there's something powerful about human hope itself. You reflect. Relics, real or counterfeited, provided something meaningful in a world filled with disease, war, and death. If someone finds peace after touching a bone, real or not, who are you to sneer? As night falls and candles dim, you make your way out of the monastery. The courtyard is quiet now, pilgrims resting in their cloaks. You pass the merchant again. He winks. Change your mind yet? I've got a splinter from Noah's Ark. You raise your hands in surrender. No, thank you. I'm keeping my collection to 1 vial of questionable liquid from a cottage. You pat your pocket. The vial from last section still sits there. You wonder, what if someone labels it Tears of St. Lazarus? Someday, you exit through the stone arch again, feeling the cool night wrap around you. The path ahead is lined with crooked wooden signposts. You choose one leading toward an empty village road, where torchlight flickers gently. Behind you, the monks resume their chanting. Ahead, another mystery calls. You take a deep breath. There's beauty in the strange path you're on, walking between truth and stories, questioning but never closed off, like a pilgrim without a shrine. You sigh and whisper, "Next time I want a souvenir, I'm buying a keychain." The night carries your voice away, mingling it with wind and leaves. Your boots crunch softly over frost, hardened earth as you leave the monastery behind. The path ahead leads you into a flat, rolling landscape of gray-green tundra. The sky is wide low, a dull steel dome pressing down on a world of mist and wind. You pull your cloak tighter against the chill and whisper to yourself, "Okay, this is definitely not Burgundy anymore." You walk until the land grows rougher, dotted with boulders flecked with lichen. Sparse grasses sway in the biting wind. You squint and spot something, timbers, half collapsed, emerging from the earth like ribs of a forgotten beast. You approach slowly. The wood is weathered, centuries old, but the shape is unmistakable. Viking architecture. You've reached a place few medieval Europeans even believed existed. A Norse settlement far beyond their known world. A territory hinted at in sagas, dismissed by scholars, then rediscovered under layers of moss and myth. You kneel, touching a carved support beam. It still holds the faintest trace of a stylized dragon head, its nostrils wide, fangs bared. The breath of seafaring ancestors, mainstream historical fact in the 1960s. Archaeological evidence confirmed Norse settlements in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, centuries before Columbus. Known today as Elansox Meadows, the site revealed longhouses, workshops, and iron forges. They weren't myths. The Vikings really made it here, to the shores of North America. For centuries, medieval Europeans had whispered about Vinland, a land across the sea rich with timber and wine. Most scholars dismissed it as fantasy. They were wrong. You stand beneath a half-intact archway of turf and timber, now home to moss and small birds' nests. You can almost see them. Norse settlers hauling driftwood, tending fires, sharpening blades. You take a step, and the ground shifts slightly under your boot. With a careful stoop, you brush away soil. A fragment of metal catches the light. It's a broken brooch, intricately woven in knot design. You feel a thrill. This isn't prophecy. It's proof. The evidence is here, silent but undeniable. Fringe tidbit. There's a Norse legend describing Skrælings, encounters with indigenous peoples in North America. Some scholars argue these early contacts left subtle traces in genetic and cultural memory. A few indigenous communities in the far north preserve oral traditions about short-lived pale visitors from the sea. Others say the Vikings were repelled. The truth is, well, historians still argue whether the Norse and indigenous peoples traded, fought, or simply stared across bonfires in mutual suspicion. You hold that tension in your palm, like the cold metal brooch. A sudden gust sends leaves tumbling over the ground. You rise and explore further. Wooden structures lie in rough outlines, foundations for longhouses, storage buildings. You imagine one as a lively hall, packed with laughter and mead. The smell of roasted seabird wafts through your mind. You can almost hear someone shouting over the din, "Life, I told you that barley wouldn't make beer." That's joke one. And you appreciate it enough to smile in the wind. You wander toward a cluster of low mounds, curious. These might be storage pits, places where the Norse would have kept food or skins. Peering into one, you find it lined with stone and wood, faint traces of soot visible. With no refrigeration, they dried fish and preserved hides. Months must have dragged on with nothing but the crash of waves, and the occasional fox peering through the settlement's perimeter. A raven flutters overhead, cawing once before alighting on a bent trellis. You salute it half seriously. Ravens, after all, were sacred to Odin, symbols of memory and thought. You can't help but feel like you're walking through a ghost story. Not haunted in the spooky way, haunted by longing. These settlers carved out a piece of their world here, lived and worked and died here. Their graves, unmarked and eroding, rest beneath your feet. You sit sullenly on a carved bench that's half decayed. Why leave? You murmur. Maybe the crops failed. Maybe the winters were too long. Or maybe, as one chronicler wrote, the Skraelings came in number, and arrows darkened the sun. Historians still argue whether conflict drove the settlers away, or whether they simply chose not to stay. You sit quietly, imagining that moment of decision, pack everything up, abandon months or years of work, sail toward an unknown horizon. That takes more than fear. That takes belief. The sea wind stirs. It carries faint sounds, waves crashing, seabirds calling, maybe even the distant creak of phantom oars. You stand and follow the wind, making your way to the rocky shoreline. The ocean sprawls before you, vast and unknowable. From this vantage, it's not hard to see why so many dismissed the stories. To medieval minds, this expanse meant the literal edge of the world, where the ocean poured into darkness. You've heard plenty of wild medieval claims, giant sea serpents, continents of gold. Here's one you like. The Vikings found grapes and named the land Vinland. Modern scholars think they probably found berries, not wine grapes. But if you've ever tasted a half-fermented lingonberry mash, you'll understand how that story could inflate. That's joke too, but it's also a kind of truth. We exaggerate what we want to believe. A faint sound snaps you out of your reverie. A crackling fire. You follow it to a low depression, where someone has built a camp. A figure sits, wrapped in fur, face hidden beneath a thick hood. As you approach, they speak first. Cold night. The voice is soft, accented. You nod and sit across the fire. The figure tosses in a handful of dried herbs. Smoke rises, carrying hints of sage and pine sap. You breathe in, and the scent tingles your mind with ancient familiarity. You're looking for them. They say, "You're not the first." You ask what they mean. They lean forward, pushing back the hood. A woman's face lined with age, eyes sharp like glass. "People come here to find proof of stories," she says. "They forget the stories were people." You pause, struck. She's right. She points to a stone nearby, etched with runes. You kneel and read. It's Old Norse, roughly carven, yet the message is clear. We came. We waited. The land would not be ours. You sit silently. It's a confession and an epitaph. The woman stands slowly. "They left," she says. "But not all memories go with a ship." She wraps her cloak and steps into the dark, leaving you with the fire and the stone. You stare into the flames, feeling the weight of that truth. Vikings did what people have always done. They tried to expand. They learned. They survived. And sometimes they left. The earth absorbed their stories until someone like you came along to dig them up again. You put out the campfire and stand, brushing ash from your cloak. Long shadows stretch across the settlement as the moon rises. You survey the remnants once more. An abandoned forge, a fallen roof, a bowl carved with knotwork lying in the dirt. It's silent, but in the silence you hear echoes. Laughter, hammer strikes, wind against oars. A final thought rises in your mind. People crossed oceans in open wooden boats with no GPS, yet some still refuse to believe they reached North America. You chuckle. Try doing that with a medieval map that says dragons live off the coast. Joke 3, in case anyone was counting. You feel warmer inside than the fire provided. You begin walking back inland. The icy wind trails you like a playful dog. You tug your cloak hood up and whisper, "Don't worry. The next stop won't involve frostbite." Probably. And with that, you step off the ridge, heading deeper into the darkened path, where new stories await. Behind you, the Viking skeletons stay silent, but their imprint remains, shaped by stubbornness, wonder, and a keen taste for adventure. You carry it forward, like a good traveler does, one footstep at a time, across forgotten routes, toward the next strange door carved in history's thick walls.
You're back on solid ground now, leaving behind the whispering sea winds and time-worn Viking beams. The path leads southward, grass giving way to cobblestone. Ahead, the terrain rises gently, dotted with torchlit watchtowers and distant pennants fluttering in the dusky haze. The air tingles with tension. Something is moving beneath the surface here, You feel it like a finger pressed to your spine. You crest a small hill, and there it is, a sprawling palace fortress, bristling with battlements and guarded by men in livery. It's a place built not just for ruling, but for hiding things. Secrets slip through the stone halls like smoke, especially certain secrets with precious little blood in their veins. You quicken your pace. A storm is building. You approach through a narrow gate, the guards eyeing you with practiced suspicion. But no one stops you. Maybe you look like a courier, or just foolish enough to be harmless. Inside, courtiers cluster in murmuring groups, too engrossed in gossip to notice your arrival. You catch snatches of hushed conversation. Gone. Locked away. Something most sinister buzzes just beneath the politeness. You follow the tension like a rope. You arrive at a long. Portraits line the walls. Kings and queens, painted in heavy oils, their gazes stern. Except 2 frames. Empty. Just dull outlines where faces were removed. You shiver. Even their memory was erased. A grandmotherly figure shuffles over, leaning on a cane. "You want to know," she says before you speak. You nod. She gestures you closer. "They were just boys," she whispers, voice brittle with age. That's all. This is the story of disappearing princes, a medieval phenomenon that wasn't just mystery, it was policy. Mainstream historical fact: the princes in the tower, Edward V and his brother Richard, vanished in 1483, locked away in the Tower of London by their uncle, Richard EU. They were never seen again. Contemporary sources accused Richard of murdering them to secure the throne. Modern scholars still debate the truth, but the boys' disappearance reshaped English monarchy, leaving scars felt for centuries. You step deeper into the palace. It feels colder now, as if the stones remember. You slip through an open door into a dim chamber brimming with parchment. Court clerks hunch over desks, hurriedly writing letters. You spot a scroll on the floor, snatched hastily from a desk. You unfurl it. It's a decree ordering the swift relocation of high-born boys of contested lineage. No names, no seals, just chillingly precise language. You quietly roll it up and tuck it into your cloak. This is bigger than one tower, bigger than England. A whisper floats by. They hid one in a monastery. You perk up. A monk, a cloistered prince. You follow the voice to a small group near the hearth. 2 merchants discuss over cups. Heard one escaped, took a false name. Bah, more likely a ruse. A fringe tidbit comes to mind. Some fringe historians argue that royal hideaways disguised young heirs in common clothing, letting them live among villagers until a safer time. There's even a legend in France of a fisherman's orderly, well-spoken son who vanished when the king died. Coincidence? Or a pawn moved off the board? Historians still argue whether these hidden heirs ever truly existed, or if they were convenient bedtime stories for uneasy nations. You wander toward an iron-bound door. No guards posted. Odd. You push, and it creaks open, revealing a stone stairwell spiraling downward. You descend slowly, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The air thickens with dust and something else, melancholy. At bottom, you find a narrow hall of locked rooms, not prison cells, bedrooms. Furnishings intact, though covered in cobwebs. You enter one. A child-sized bed sits unmade, a feather toy on the pillow. You swallow hard. Someone left in a hurry. You open a writing desk. Inside lies a small diary, ink smudged. You flip through. Sparse entries. Papa says I'll wear the crown. Then, Uncle Richard visits today. He looks tired. You feel a sudden lump form in your throat. This is more than history. It's human. You close the diary gently and step out. The heaviness sits on your shoulders like chainmail. You have to breathe and joke, because your nerves are stretched thin. Guess the royal family didn't believe in boarding schools. Joke 1, gently delivered. You make your way back upstairs, but the palace seems different now. Shadows stretch longer. Candles sputter. Even the noble tapestries seem to stare, like they know what truly happened, that not every royal played fair. That power often required blood stains no one dared wash. In the great hall, a feast is underway. You slip behind a pillar observing. Laughter rings hollow. A queen, stern, elegant, glances at an empty high seat and slips the tiniest sigh. You catch it. It confirms everything. Absence echoes louder than banquets. Servants deliver platters of roasted pheasant, glazed fruits. But as you watch, you notice two places are set but untouched. Silverware gleaming. Chalices filled. No one speaks of it. Yet every eye flickers toward those empty spots, then back to their plates. You're witnessing grief that's been folded into etiquette. A young page sidles past, muttering. You catch one phrase. A ship. They said he sailed at dawn. Another rumor. You approach the harbor at first light, just in case. But something else nags you. Records. If these vanishings were systematic, there must be hints. You make your way to the archive tower. As you climb, torch in hand, the air grows thick with dust. Scrolls and ledgers crowd the shelves. You run your fingers over spines. Tax records, birth certifications, royal appointments. You pry open a heavy volume, census lists. Across dozens of pages, certain names are crossed out with precise strokes. All children. All between 7 and 14. You exhale sharply. It's not random. It's intentional. Historians still argue whether these disappearances were isolated political murders or part of a broader pattern. A medieval protocol for dealing with inconvenient heirs. You think it's a mix. Different monarchies, different motives, but the same cold logic, better no rival than a future rebellion. You leave the archive with a bitter taste. As dawn cracks open the sky, you step outside, onto the docks. Water laps gently against wooden beams. A lone fisherman ties nets. You wave. He squints at your jangling cloak. You're looking for the princes, he says without preamble. You freeze. Did you see them? His mouth trembles slightly. Long ago, I was a boy. Something loaded in the dark. A carriage, no lights. They woke me. What did you do? You ask. He laughs without humor. Nothing. I wasn't stupid. You can't blame him. In the medieval world, asking the wrong question could get you silenced permanently. You stand near the water, contemplating the quiet. In the ripples, you see two small shadows, like brothers tugging at each other's cloaks, trying to figure out which way was home. You throw a pebble into the sea. Even kings are kids once. You murmur. That's joke too. The ocean doesn't laugh, but it doesn't argue either. You head back toward the palace gates, passing gardens with roses the color of spilled wine. Even here, beauty carries secrets. You pause before a statue of a crowned boy, features smooth, unspecific, royal symbolism, maybe to remind everyone that innocence once wore the crown. You snort quietly, sure, until Uncle gets ambitious. Joke 3. It slips out like a sigh. You exit the grounds. The doors shut behind you with a cold click. As you walk away, you feel those empty portraits stare after you. History's ghosts don't scream. They simply disappear, leaving whispers and blank frames behind. You glance back once, catching the faint silhouette of a tower, a window high up barred with iron. For a moment, you think you see someone standing inside. Small, watching. Then the figure's gone. Maybe it was a trick of light, or maybe not. You keep walking. The road ahead is wide and open, but something in you feels changed. You've seen how power can eclipse even the smallest light. How even the young aren't spared from conspiracies centuries deep. But tonight, the sky is clear. The stars shimmer like silver coins. Maybe one of them is a prince, shining from a place beyond reach. Even if the land swallowed them, the sky remembers. Your boots crunch onward, each step less heavy. You think of all the other stories yet to be uncovered. Things buried in vaults, whispered by servants, coded into chronicles. And you, a traveller with suit on your hem, and a stolen decree in your cloak. Keep the pace steady. You're not just walking. You're investigating history's unsolved cases with nothing but curiosity, a quiet voice, and a sense of timing. New secrets loom ahead, beckoning. Your journey leaves the royal palace behind, but its shadows cling to your thoughts like damp wool. You feel the weight of whispered truths pressing down. Beyond the walls, cottage lights twinkle like stars from a different sky. Ordinary, warm, unmarred by conspiracy. But you don't slow. You have another destination in mind, one older than any crowned the church. The path winds through a wooded glen, where owl eyes gleam and branches creak overhead like old knuckles. Eventually, it spills you out onto a low rise. Below lies a sprawling stone cathedral. Its spires claw at the night like gnarled fingers, and a low mist coils around its foundation. It feels more like a memory than a building. You approach slowly, boots crunching gravel, breath soft against the air. Every cathedral was more than it appeared. Scholars love to argue about masonry and faith and architecture, but you know better. This place is a vault, and vaults hold secrets. The great doors groan open as you press one palm against them. You slip inside, and it's pure hushed reverence. Candles flicker in tall sconces. Rows of pews stretch toward a distant altar glowing with golden iconostasis. The only sound is your footsteps, until it isn't. A monk appears from a side aisle, holding a lantern. His face is lined with years. He squints at you, raising the light higher. You nod, but only one word slips out: archives. His eyes widen slightly. Then he nods back as if expecting you. Without a word, he turns and walks toward a narrow hall. You follow. The hallway coils and dips, deeper into the cathedral's underbelly. Down one flight, then two, then three stone staircases, until the air thickens with dust and metal tang. You reach a low iron door. The monk takes a key from his belt, pauses as if weighing your soul, and turns it. The door creaks open, revealing a chamber lit by a single torch. Shelves line the walls from floor to ceiling, crammed with dusty codices, scrolls bound in cracked leather, scraps of parchment tied with fraying twine. It's a graveyard of words, but not dead ones, just hidden. You exhale softly as you step inside. The monk bows once, leaves, and closes the door. You're alone with centuries. You begin reading. It's slow work, but the reward comes quickly. You pull one volume, its spine stamped with red beeswax. Inside are gold, inked pages detailing donations. Tithers from nobles, miners, even royalty poking coins into the church's wide pockets. But something unusual catches your eye: a list of special contributions, marked with a coded sigil. You've seen it before, on that secret decree in the palace. A financial trail connecting both institutions. A mainstream historical fact floats in. Throughout the medieval era, church and monarchy were deeply intertwined. Kings couldn't rule without church sanction. The church couldn't hold wealth without royal protection. They were partners in power, often exchanging favors, and often hiding them together. You set the ledger aside and move to a smaller chest. You open it. Inside are rolled scrolls tightly bound with green silk, rare. You untee one. It's a letter, ink faded but legible. The sender writes with urgent tone about diverting the infant prince. The phrase jolts you. Another hair, hidden, perhaps in this very church. You unroll further and see, transfer complete. Stable location under St. Jacob's crypt. You inhale sharply, beneath a crypt. You quietly slide the scroll into your cloak. Evidence is mounting. This place is more than a monastery. It's a vault for inconvenient truths. Historians still argue whether medieval churches actively concealed royal children as political pawns. Some say it's fanciful myth. Others point to rare documents like these, arguing that certain crypts had dual purposes: tomb above, living secret below. You move deeper. Digging through shelves, you find strange entries, lists of forbidden texts, with notes like too dangerous for public reading. Next to one. Burned 1267. Another. Sailed below chapel. A fringe tidbit comes to mind, some manuscripts of early astronomy, suggesting Earth moved around the sun, were hidden centuries before Copernicus. You imagine a monk scanning the sky with jittery nerves, knowing his observations could get him branded heretic or worse. Your lantern flickers. You need to move. But the pull of mystery is strong. You see a carved niche behind the last shelf, partly stone, partly shadow. A thick wooden beam blocks it. Curious, you push. A small panel behind the wall shifts. You crouch and slide through. You emerge into a thin corridor. Torches line the walls, each one guttering weakly. Someone lights them rarely. It leads to a small chamber beneath the main altar. In the center is a stone slab. An inscription reads, Quod mortuum est, non semper dormiet. What is dead does not always sleep. You swallow. That could be a comforting message, or a warning. You kneel and push the slab. It groans sideways. Beneath, a black chasm. Stone stairs. You descend, the air grows cold. You reach a crypt lined with sarcophagi. But one is different. Smaller, a child's size. You approach. The lid is sealed with wax, not stone. That suggests a temporary burial. You scrape at the seal with your dagger. The wax splits. You lift the lid. Inside, lined with velvet, lies a small bundle of cloth. No body. Someone removed it. Deliberately. You stare into the empty space. Another vanished hair. It hits you. The safe location referenced in the letters was temporary. Without modern forensic records, the disappearance could have gone unnoticed. Wrapped in holy burial. You stand there, gripping the edge of the sarcophagus. It's silent, except for the distant trickle of dripping water. You say softly, "This was someone's son." The air presses in. You remember the fisherman and his secret. That he wasn't stupid. Maybe none of them were stupid. Just powerless. You lift your lantern. Something catches your eye near the crypt wall, faint scratch marks, as if someone clawed at the stone. You step closer. The scratches form letters. Barely readable help. You blink hard. This place is getting to you. You exhale long and slow. Time to climb back up. You ascend. Lantern in one hand, letters hidden in your cloak. You reach the hidden niche, slip through the archive, and carefully pull the shelves back into place. The iron door clicks shut behind you as you exit, but something feels off. The cathedral above is different now. Candles burn lower. The air feels still watched. You stroll past the pew's eyes, flicking over every corner. Then you see it. The monk from earlier, leaning against a column. His eyes track you with a stare that says, "We know what you found." Your heart flickers. Instead of fleeing, you nod once, throat dry, and push open the main doors. Fresh air rushes in. Night is still there, unchanged. Stars scatter the sky like broken glass. You walk fast, boots slapping stone. Behind you, the cathedral looms silent. But its secrets are with you now. You think about how many truths never made it out of such walls. How many miraculous relics or forbidden books were buried in crypts below people's very prayers. One of your jokes slips out reflexively. No wonder the confession line was always long. They needed time to shred documents. Joke 1. It keeps your pulse steady. You follow a stream out of town, leaving the cathedral's shadow behind. Owls hoot as if marking time. The moon hangs low, full and tired. You glance back. Its light catches something glimmering on the church roof. Strange. But you're done with cathedrals for tonight. You inhale and slow your pace. The road ahead curves toward the marketplace of a sleeping village. You hear idle music in the distance. A lute. Probably. Someone practicing in their room. Life goes on, even when truth hides under stone. You reach a stone bridge, stop halfway. Below, water rushes softly. You lean on the railing. Historians still argue whether church vaults stored more bodies or secrets. You murmur. Joke 2. The river doesn't care. It just flows, hiding things of its own. A pack mule clops by, carrying sacks of barley. The driver nods. You nod back, smiling faintly. After everything you've seen, towers with missing windows, empty crypts with no bones, it's almost comforting to see commerce marching onward. Nothing like medieval economics to put conspiracies in perspective. You pull out a church seal, a tiny copper emblem you pried from a chest. You flip it in your hand, thinking over all the hidden children, forbidden books, questionable relics. Then you tuck it away. Souvenirs are dangerous, but stories, that's where the treasure is. You step off the bridge. A soft wind brushes your cheeks. Somewhere, a church bell tolls. Midnight. Another day fades. Another secret edges into your path. You keep walking, shoulders relaxed now. Head up. This is what you do. Chase shadows. Sift whispers. Listen to stones. There's no map for this journey. Just faith. Not the church kind. Faith in curiosity. Faith that someone, someday, will care that children disappeared under marble arches. That dusty scrolls told the truth, but died in silence. The church's secrets are still whispering in your ears as you wander under a moon sky toward the next destination. You've spent the last few nights unraveling stories about royal conspiracies, missing heirs, buried confessions. Now, you find yourself returning to a more familiar setting, one bustling with laughter and echoes of clinking tankards, a medieval tavern. You've walked miles, road dust baked into your boots, and the glow of a torch, lit sign up ahead reads, "The Red Toad Inn." The carved toad on the wooden post looks like it's seen things. As you push open the heavy oak door, warm air envelopes you. Spiced stew, smoked meat, cheap ale. It's so cozy and noisy, you almost relax. Almost. A burly man with forearms the size of loaves stands behind the counter, polishing tankards. He gives you a once-over, the road-weary cloak, the tired eyes, and jerks his chin toward the only empty table. You nod and head there, easing yourself onto a bench. You ask for wine but get all. That's fine. You're not here to drink, you're here to probe. You lean back, listening. This tavern has stories trapped between its beams, leaking from drunken tongues. And tonight, one particular tale hangs low, overhead, like smoke. Whisperings of the Templars. A group of merchants at the next table is swapping rumors about mysterious coins found beneath a collapsed barn. Crossed swords on one side, one says quietly, like the old Templar crest. You lean in just enough to hear better. Mainstream historical fact. The Knights Templar were officially dissolved in 1312 by Pope Clement V, with many members arrested across Europe. Their sudden downfall, ordered under pressure from King Philip IV of France, fueled centuries of speculation that the Templars possessed forbidden knowledge, enormous treasure, or even secret descendants. You sip your ale and let your eyes drift across the room. In the corner, a hooded figure sits alone, carving something into the table. Curious, you approach casually, tankard in hand. As you near, the figure glances up, young, maybe 20. Quick hands. They cover the carving. Nice work, you say softly, gesturing with your chin. They eye you. Silence. Then a faint smile. They push the wood a little, revealing a familiar symbol: two knights on a single horse. The Templar seal. Your pulse jumps. You lower your voice. There are others. A few. They whisper. Scattered. Hiding in plain sight. Their words fall like breadcrumbs, leading you into a dark forest of ancient conspiracy. You ask their name. They avoid the question. Names are dangerous. They respond. Fair enough. If the Templars really survived, anonymity would be currency. You take a gamble. You loosen your cloak, showing the small church seal you lifted from the cathedral. Their eyes widen just a fraction. Recognition. Maybe even pity. They're looking. They murmur. You raise an eyebrow. For what? Everything they lost. You swallow. Your mind flashes back to the empty child's coffin. To the scratched plea for help. Maybe some Templar knowledge wasn't treasure. It was people. Maybe that's the everything. The hooded stranger stands abruptly. They like to burn things, they say, leaning in. But they forget. We carved into stone. Then they turn and slip out the back door. You sit there, chewing that line like old bread. Historians still argue whether surviving Templars went underground and continued their order under other names. Freemasons, secret fraternities, or simply farmers with dusty chests hidden under their floors. There's no concrete evidence. But then, that's the point. You finish your ale and decide it's time to explore that back door. Whoever they were, they wanted to be followed. Or they wanted to leave a clue. The innkeeper raises an eyebrow as you walk past. You toss a coin on the counter. You know who that was. You say quietly. He shrugs. I mind my own owl. Fair. That's joke one. Out back the alley is empty, save for a thin trail of horse prints in the soft ground. You follow them, lantern raised, until the prints merge with a fork in the path and vanish in the mud. Of course they do. The world loves hiding the obvious. You head to the old quarter of town, where stone arches and overhanging timber frame narrow streets. You've heard whispers before. Some Templar vaults were bricked into walls or hidden beneath chapels, and only certain symbols marked the way. You scan the buildings. Nothing. Until you notice a faint carving on the side of a well, two circles, intersecting, like a crude Venn diagram. You kneel, touch the marks, feel a notch. There's no click, no rumble, but something's there. You stand and look down into the well. It's dark. Too dark. You tie your lantern to the rope and lower it. The flame reveals an opening partway down, a bricked up passage. You whisper. We're carved into stone. Your heart thumps. This is it. You climb down carefully, using footholds carved in the stone. When you reach the passage, you press lightly on the bricks. One shifts. Behind it, empty space. A tunnel, just wide enough. You slip inside. The smell hits you. Damp earth. Forgotten manuscripts. You light another torch. The tunnel ends in a chamber lined with wooden crates, sealed with wax. Your fingers tremble awkwardly as you break the first seal. Inside, documents. Scrolls preserved in oiled cloth. You unroll the top one and squint. It's a map. But not of this region. A crude drawing of a temple under desert suns. Could it be Jerusalem? Historians still argue whether Templar escapees fled to the Middle East, guarding relics from the First Crusade. Some fringe theories suggest they made it as far as Ethiopia, and that hidden churches there conceal ancient chests bearing their cross. You hold history's thread in your hands. In the corner of the chamber, something glints. A small chalice, wrapped in linen. You unwrap it. It's tarnished silver, engraved with a heart pierced by a sword. You inhale sharply. That symbol wasn't official Templar iconography, but some branches adopted it after dissolution. It represented sacrifice in service of truth. You touch it gently. You came back for this. You whisper. Maybe the stranger wasn't hunting treasure. They were preserving legacy. You tuck the map and seal scroll under your cloak. Then you wrap the chalice and place it back. That's not yours to take. Some secrets should be kept. You emerge from the tunnel a little breathless. As you climb out of the well, dawn begins to tickle the eastern sky. Birds chirp. A dog barks. Normal life returns. But you've seen a hidden pulse beneath all of it. The hooded stranger is long gone. But as you turn, you see a small stone placed on the well's lip. A marking. You lift it. Beneath, 3 words are carved in tiny script: follow the river. A clue, or a farewell. You smile faintly. Looks like sleep is cancelled. You say with a sigh. That's joke too. You step back into the winding streets. Your path now shadows a river cutting through town, glinting like spilled mercury. You walk beside it, passing a shepherd, a group of gossiping mill workers, a child dragging a stick. All of them oblivious, all of them safe within the world presented to them. but you've glimpsed the scaffolding underneath, the mechanisms of secrecy and whispered survival. The Templars may be gone, but their fingerprints still paint medieval stone. You reach a stone bridge. You peer down. The river hums. You think about the hidden chambers, the sealed crates, the map marked with foreign sands. Somewhere, those clues connect. You feel warmth beneath your ribs. Anticipation. That shimmering thrill that something enormous is within reach. You exhale, rub your temples. Treasure hunting sounds romantic, until you ruin your boots in medieval sewer water. You mutter. Joke 3. At least the river's clean. Probably. Night's last scraps fade. Morning comes on slow and gold. You look up. Above you perches a raven, watching with glossy eyes. It caws once, briefly, and flies off. You watch its shadow glide across stone and sky. The river winds with gentle purpose, carrying stories in its current. You follow its path with steady steps, feeling the cold mist cling to your cheekbones. Everything is a bit clearer when water is nearby. Like nature is whispering truths, disguised as ripples. The hooded stranger's final message still turns over in your thoughts like a silver coin. Follow the river. So you do. As the sun begins its slow ascent, the riverbank glows with soft saffron, and morning fog unfurls off the grass like slow, moving smoke. You walk for an hour, passing orchards. Then meadows dotted with grazing sheep that glance up as you move by, as though they know you're not from here. A farmer gives you a courteous nod, and his wife pulls a child close, half curious, half wary. Travelers carry stories, and sometimes trouble. You keep to the banks. Your boots leave shallow footprints in soft sand as you scan the other side. Small rows of cottages appear here and there, smoke rising lazily from thatched rooftops. You cross a stone bridge. On the other side, a wooden sign leans crooked beneath a spreading oak. It points left. Vermund's Crossing 1 mile. Right ruined keep 3 miles. The river curves right. You follow. The ruined keep is not truly ruined upon closer inspection. It's simply abandoned and surrendering to brambles. Still, it stands guard over a bend in the water, its stones a mottled blend of moss, and the paler grey of seaside cliffs. You pause before the gate. Once, this place likely hosted knights and nobles, storehouses of grain, bonfires in its courtyard. Now, silence. Bird's nest where banners once hung, and the portcullis lies rusted half open. You step inside. It feels like the skeleton of a beast. But your intuition buzzes like a trapped fly. This place hasn't been forgotten, just repurposed. You move past the broken fountain in the courtyard. Green water sits stagnant. A frog leaps into the pool plop. It's almost comic. Gwes the pool boy never showed. You whisper. Joke 1. But you keep going. The halls aren't just fallen. They're reconfigured. Some stones are newer than others. You tap a section lightly. Hollow. You kneel. Press your palm against it. There's a seam. A concealed entrance of some kind. You wedge a knife into the gap and pry. A block shifts inward. Dust spills like flour. Sunshine spills through the crack. You push and peer into a narrow hidden room. Inside, a simple table holds a spread of old maps, weighed down with rusted daggers. On one is the same symbol you saw carved on the well, 2 intersecting circles. The hooded stranger was right. Someone's been marking places. You scan the parchment. Dots arc from coastlines to inland forests. From one ruins to castle ruins. You get a chill recognizing some locations. They all correspond to stories of suppressed archives, or vanished people you've been following. Historians still argue whether medieval secret societies maintained underground information networks linking such sites, creating safe houses across Europe. Some think it's just folklore. Others suspect coded carvings still lie in plain sight. Right under modern pavement, beside the maps, sits a scroll sealed with pitch black wax. You brush it. The surface is smooth, almost warm, to your surprise. Carefully, you break the seal. Inside is a letter addressed simply, to the bearer of secrets. You almost laugh at how melodramatic that sounds. You read. You stand where others stood before you. They could not save the truth. Perhaps you can. When the stain of kings bleeds into stone, follow the water. Seek where river meets deep wood. There you will find the bone key. Only with it may you unlock what centuries hid. You release a slow breath. This isn't just medieval melodrama. It's a continuing thread. A web of whispers weaving you into its pattern. Even now, someone's guiding you. You tuck the scroll into your cloak. You exit the shadow room and survey the courtyard again. A breeze sweeps through the keep. You catch a smell. Pine smoke. New. You whirl around. At the corner of the courtyard, someone watches you. No hood this time. Tall, broad shoulders. An unshaven face beneath a traveler's hat. He doesn't move. You call out. You're late for the meeting. Joke 2. He lowers his chin, but says nothing. Only turns and strides through a warped archway, disappearing behind scrub. You track his steps, but when you reach the spot, he's gone. No footprints, just flattened grass, like he was never there. You feel the river nearby, silent, steady. You exit the keep and follow the water again. With every step, the daylight grows warmer, but you still feel a chill between your ribs. So many layers. Kings, churches, Templars, hidden networks, and now bone keys. You shake your head lightly. Sometimes you think you're guessing at shadows cast by clouds. Other times, you're sure someone carved the shadows just for you. You arrive at Dendril Woods by midday. A green crown of tangled branches and filtered sunlight. The river skirts the edge before diving under a low wooden footbridge. On the other side, thick forest floor, littered with pine needles, mushrooms, and secrets. You take the bridge, but halfway across, your foot hits something uneven. You kneel. One plank has a marking burned into it. A sword crossed with a watering can. You snort. Garden Knights. But something tugs at your memory. That's a symbol medieval wanderers used to indicate safe drinking water was nearby. Alternately, safe passage for kindred travelers. Fringe tidbit. Secret guilds and early Freemason groups often left such marks on rural posts and bridges, guiding initiates between safe houses. Most have worn away, but a few remain like forgotten graffiti. The footbridge continues into dense ferns, but you notice, just off the bank, a partially submerged stone marker beneath the water. Its top is exposed, carved with two intersecting circles. The same motif. You roll up your sleeves, crouch, and reach into the water. The stone wobbles slightly. Your fingers feel a groove, something embedded beneath. You brush away river silt, revealing a thin bronze object. You slide it free. It's a long key, shaped like a vertebra on one end, carved with a dragon curling through the metal. The bone key. You exhale sharply. It was here all along, waiting for someone who would disturb a bridge. The letter had said, "Only with it may you unlock what centuries hid." So what now? You walk into the woods, clutching the relic in your palm. For an hour you wander, letting instinct lead. The forest feels ancient, tree roots rising like sleeping serpents. Your thoughts drift back to your childhood, listening to stories of hidden treasure beneath old monastery floors. You smile faintly at the thought. You've become that child's hero, or worst nightmare. The forest deepens. Ahead, you spot a stone arch. Not quite a ruin, more like a memorial. Moss clings to it in heavy sheets, and beneath it, a tunnel mouth gapes, framed by coiled roots. A forgotten chapel entrance, perhaps. You approach slowly. The bone key feels warm now. You grip it tighter and step inside. The tunnel slopes downward in a narrow spiral. You move carefully, torch held high. The walls are carved with reliefs. Some scenes of kneeling knights, others of cloaked figures passing relics hand to hand. It's not religious art, it's history recorded secretly. A timeline not meant for the living. You reach a heavy wooden door with a strange lock. It looks like two rib bones crossing. You bring the key near. It fits, not into a hole, but into the space between the bone shapes. With a gentle twist, the lock shifts open. The door creaks. Beyond is a circular chamber. Skeletons sit propped in alcoves. 6 of them, each in meditation pose, jawbones hanging open. You freeze, pulse thudding. Then you see beyond them in the center of the room a stone pedestal. On it a silver, plated box, engraved with the same dragon. It's dusty, but untouched by decay. Historians still argue whether medieval secret orders preserved relics or texts with the explicit hope they'd be rediscovered under better rulers, or better historians. These skeletons, did they stay behind to protect them until death? Or were they sealed inside willingly? You approach, slowly lift the box. It's heavy. You ease the lid open. Inside, wrapped in silk, is a leather-bound tome. Its cover is branded with a cross and circle sigil. You slip it out carefully and open to the first page. There, in faded ink, written in exile by Brother Ivo. They accused us of heresy, but truth has its own cathedral. Your heart stutters. You flip page after page. It's a chronicle of whispered collaborations between kings, churchmen, scholars and knights, plans for hidden heirs, lists of safe houses, even coded chapters about the Red Star beneath Jerusalem, suggesting the Templars found something other than the Holy Grail, something marble could not hold. You close the tome gently. This is why kings panicked, why churches sealed crypts, why men vanished into caskets with no bones inside. This book was worth an army. You exhale, tuck the tome under your cloak, and look at the skeletons. One is gripping a stone tablet. You brush it lightly. One Latin phrase etched deep. We kept the flame until someone returned. Joke 3 slips out. Awfully trusting for skeletons. You roll the door shut behind you and climb back to daylight. You step back into the forest, chest tight with awe. The world is waking. Birds trill. Powder. Blue sky brightens. You walk quietly, knowing you hold something that could rewrite chapters. Or light bonfires. You reach the riverbank again. You stare at the water, holding the bone key in one hand, the tome tight against your side. Then you tuck both away. You've got a journey to finish, and this is just one lamp along the road. The forest gradually thins as afternoon presses on, and your boots find firmer soil, packed earth, dotted with wildflowers and the beginnings of cobblestone. You're approaching something more deliberate than woodland paths. As you crest a soft rise, stretch wary and alert, you see it. A small village tucked around a bend, nestled between the river and the foothills. You pause just inside the tree line to survey it. Smoke trails from chimneys. Children skip between market stalls. A bell tolls somewhere, likely the chapel calling for late day prayers. But beneath the quaint buzz of life, you sense what's hidden, something like an undertow, unseen but powerful. Your instinct was to keep moving, ghost-like, avoiding eyes. But the bone key weighs your pocket. The tome presses against your ribs. Maybe now is the time for a new kind of movement. Not just carrying secrets, but placing pieces down. You step into the open. A villager spots you and waves. You raise a hand in kind. Further down, a priest in linen robes stands outside the chapel, greeting locals as they bring herbs, bread, candles. He sees you and gives a knowing nod, not a greeting, more like recognition. Your muscles tighten. You walk toward him. "Welcome, traveler," he says in smooth Latin, masking the curl of accent. "You've come a long way." You respond coolly, "That depends. How far is it from the river to the truth?" His eyes flicker. He gestures to the chapel. "Come inside." There are ears in the market. Inside, the chapel air is cool and fragrant, like stone and beeswax. Light slants through stained glass depicting familiar saints. But something is off. In each, a small circle is tucked behind the figure's hand. Your skin prickles. These are coded images, subtle markers, just like the well and the stone. The priest switches back to your language. They've been watching your route since the ruins. He points to a small alcove bench. Sit. You have something they need. You sink into the bench, keeping your hand near the hilt of your knife. Not threatening, just ready. I was told the truth was buried so well, even the grave forgot it. He chuckles softly. The grave remembers everything. The living are the forgetful ones. You pull out the bone key. Hold it in the light. This bit of bone. I know some want it, but it's no map, just a lockpick for something deeper. The priest leans closer, shadows cutting sharp across his calm face. The key doesn't open just doors. It's a symbol of continuity. Someone will want confirmation that you hold it, that you reached the vault. You mean someone like the man who watched me in the castle ruins? He nods. One of many. It's rumored some have infiltrated the Order's remnants. Not all wear hoods. Or habits. You shift slightly, scanning the chapel's dark corners. So what now? I found more than keys. A book. A marker of plans that should have died centuries ago. He tilts his head. Did you read it thoroughly? You hesitate. Not everything, just the beginning. He seems to read your silence. You'll want to finish it, he says. Certain chapters were written with our time in mind. If you seek allies, they wait past the mountains. But beware, the others will know soon enough. Spies travel faster than trust. You fish the tome from under your cloak and set it on the table. Its cover gleams, faintly in candlelight. The priest reaches out reverent. Brother Ivo script. He murmurs. I thought this burned. So did someone, you reply. He looks at you. Eyes sharp. Are you willing to unlock something that can shatter history? The truth can be a weapon, sometimes more lethal than the blade you carry. You take a moment. The weight of it sits strange. Not destiny exactly, but a gear in a machine that hums far louder and deeper than your own path. Then you say, I didn't seek this. But you didn't walk away either, he counters, voice gentler now. And those who seek nothing yet persist. Sometimes they're the ones chosen. A faint creak echoes from the door. Both of you turn. A woman enters the chapel quietly. Linen headscarf, stable boots still flecked with mud. She bows to the priest, then faces you. Forgive the intrusion. I was told a visitor arrived today with artifacts. Her words dance on the line between curiosity and certainty. You eye her cautiously. Depends who told you. She smiles a little. A friend of riverfolk. A keeper of patterns. He said I should greet you before dark. That hooded stranger again. Always threads in the dark. Before you answer, she lays something on the table. A leather pouch. She nudges it your way. You open it. Inside, a ring. A simple band etched with the same twin circle emblem. The others will know you by this, she says. Wear it when you cross the northern passes. And keep the key close. You gather the items, considering. The weight of responsibility sits cold against your palm. You stand. I'll finish the book tonight. And I'll decide whether I keep moving tomorrow. The priest nods approvingly. Good. Choices made in haste only serve the shadow. Outside, evening has begun its deepening. You pass the square again as lanterns are lit. You watch the glow flare against stone walls and wooden shutters. The world moves on, oblivious to buried truths. As you walk toward the inn, you feel eyes watching again. Not unfriendly, but measuring. You settle into a corner room, light the candle. Open the tome to the next chapter. You begin reading as night folds itself quiet around you. Ink traces of a long, vanished hand speak of networks, living descendants, and coded prophecies meant not to predict, but prepare. This wasn't just a story. It was a slow, coiling map. And now you're a new line drawn on it. You don't sleep much. Dawn pulls the sky pale, and before the innkeeper stirs, you're outside, ready to move. The ring snug on your finger, the key tied to your belt. You take one last look back at the chapel. The priest stands waiting in its doorway, a lone silhouette against gold light. He raises 2 fingers to his brow, a salute of sorts. You return it. Then you turn north, toward the mountains, toward whatever waits in the deep archives of forgetting and remembering. And as you walk, you whisper under your breath. Half prayer, half dare. The morning air is crisp and cool, tasting faintly of pine and melting frost. You step northward, leaving the village behind as the river snakes beside you like a silver thread woven into the earth. Above, distant peaks catch sunlight, a warning or a welcome. You're not sure yet. You pass through a valley that feels like a hallway between towering bookshelves, each tree a silent witness. The ground drops beneath your boots in subtle grooves, dagger scars in the dirt from old carts, and footpaths long abandoned. You're following one now, though the track has become more memory than road. It's faint, brittle, but there, like truth, like the Templars. The ring on your finger glows briefly as the sun catches it. You run a thumb across its twin, circle design, and think of the woman in the chapel. The curve of her voice when she spoke of patterns. Patterns are everywhere. They keep the world running. And when something disrupts them, even mountains seem to flinch. As the trail narrows into a rocky incline, you pause to drink from a stream. Not long after, a distant thudding sound catches your ear. Hooves. A horse approaching fast. Your shoulders tense. You slip off the trail and crouch behind a cluster of low shrubs, just before the rider appears. A cloaked figure racing hard, face shadowed, and intent. You recognize the hem of the robe. Church issue. The rider doesn't see you. They pass, then slow slightly ahead, stand in the stirrups as if searching for a sign. A moment later, they spur the horse onward. North, like you. That's unsettling. You wait until the sound fades entirely. Then you continue, but with more care. The priest had warned you spies travel faster than trust. You adjust your cloak, checking that the bone key remains secure. That's one object church agents would gladly remove from circulation, and perhaps from your body. A mile later, you reach a fork right, toward mountain switchbacks shaved into jagged stone, left, along a gentler path that hugs the river. You crouch and study the ground. Hoofprints to the right. You take the left. Perhaps the pattern breaks. Perhaps the key hasn't merely unlocked something, but drawn others out too. You follow the bending river as it widens into small lagoons dotted with reeds. Birds skim the surface, dipping their beaks. Across the water, crumbled ruins peek like broken teeth from old earth. You recognize the architecture, late Roman. You feel tugged toward them. You cross a makeshift bridge of fallen logs and moss, careful of the slick surface. Once across, you approach the ruins cautiously. Grass grows knee-high between collapsed pillars and a semicircle of cracked columns. A faded mural clings to one wall. Painted figures kneel beneath a tree, holding scrolls. You tilt your head. The tree is split in two, forming twin trunks that rise from a single root. A fringe belief circulates even today, that early orders of war, priests, not yet Templars, but precursors, hid their teachings in art, mapping spiritual truth through nature. Historians still argue whether such symbols were deliberate or just artistic flair. You, bending before this wall, feel the burn of deliberation in its layers. You explore deeper. Some chambers remain intact, kind of. One small archway shows signs of recent passage. Dirt scuffed, ash gathered near a stone slab. Someone sat here, maybe days ago. You crouch and brush the soil. Cold. The air smells subtly of burnt herbs. Then you notice it. A scrap of cloth caught in a fissure. Dark blue, embroidered with thin silver thread. You gently tug it free. It's part of a church sleeve, but not the common clergy. This pattern you've seen before. In the margins of illustrations describing a particular group, the Eighth Wardens. They weren't soldiers, nor full clergy. Their task was storage, recovery. Sometimes execution of knowledge deemed too dangerous. A shiver slips down your spine. You tuck the cloth into your pocket and back away. Whoever was here could return. You pick up your walking pace, regain the main track, and settle into a rhythm. Hours pass. You trek mountainward, air growing thinner, sky sharpening in color. Among boulders and frost, you spot movement ahead. A cluster of rounded shapes arranged in a neat semicircle. You approach. Stone huts, abandoned, or preserved. You step into the nearest. Inside, the air tastes old, like dust and candles burned long ago. A pile of slate tablets lies in a corner. You pick one up carefully. Scratched into it are phrases in Latin, but the hand is clumsy, panicked. They are coming for the flame. Hide the axis. The vault shall not speak. You feel the back of your neck tighten. Axis? Vault. Not just places, but metaphors for knowledge. You search under a wooden bench and uncover a sealed jar. Inside, a hand-drawn map. You unfurl it. It's a depiction of the region. Mountain peaks. Caves marked with circles, but one symbol stands out. A twin. Circle drawn over a place labeled Threshold of Brothers. You exhale through your teeth. Could this really be another Templar site? As you step outside, wind claws at your cloak. A flicker of motion alerts you. Someone's behind you. You spin, knife up, ready. A figure stands 10 feet away, hands raised, empty. Don't kill me, they say in breathless Latin. Young, pale face, hair matted like they've been outdoors for days. I saw you at the river ruins. They add, chest heaving. Friend or spy? You ask, holding your stance. Neither. Just desperate. They've been tracking me for days. You keep your blade angled. Ooh, the new wardens. They command the accounts of lost chapters. The church wants the tombs emptied. And you ask. I'm just a scribe, he says bitterly. I ran when I read more than I should have. He pulls something from his tunic. A scroll half burned. They tried burning this. An account of hidden heirs from Templar bloodlines. He coughs. If that's true, no one's safe. You lower your knife slightly. Why follow me? He looks at your belt. Saw the key, he murmurs. Thought you might be going where I am. You glance at the map. Maybe together is easier. Maybe death by betrayal is quicker. But you're tired of walking alone. You nod once. Fine. But break rhythm, and I'll break you. His face flickers with something like gratitude. You share your plan, tracing the twin circle destination. He nods feverishly. Yes, I read of this, a hillside seal. The threshold. You walk together? Scaling ridge lines, cutting through brittle brush. The sky bruises with dusk. Eventually, you see it a dark hollow at the curve of a hill, stone lintel marking the entrance. You approach. Inside, your torches light ancient carvings. Not of saints, but swords and snakes interlaced. The deeper you move, the colder it gets. You reach an iron gate. Suddenly, echoing footsteps behind you. You and the scribe spin. 3 robed figures block the passage. Silver, threaded sleeves. 8th wardens. Stand aside. Their leader utters. You have artifacts that do not belong to you. You burn the truth, you say, stepping between them and the scribe. We're sealed a disease, the leader counters. Will you unearth it? You fear it, you reply. That's not the same. A moment of silence. Then the scribe breaks it. He lunges, throwing dirt in their eyes. You rush, slam your shoulder into the leader. The torches flicker wildly. You don't fight to win. You fight to block. In the scramble, you kick the iron gate. The hinge shifts slightly. Just enough. You grab the scribe. Push! The two of you shove together. The gate groans open just enough to slip through. You do. Then yank it closed. Iron meets stone. The wardens pound the bars, shouting after you. But for now, the threshold is yours. You dive deeper into the tunnel. A chamber opens. A vaulted hall of stone shelves. Clated banners. A book pedestal and, there it is, a gilded chest, smaller than you imagined, but heavy with consequence. You step toward it. The scribe beside you trembles. Is this it? He whispers. The axis. You pull the bone key from your belt. Fit it into the chest. Turn. The lid clicks. Opens. Inside folded manuscripts. Sealed vials. And a single piece of parchment placed atop everything else. You lift it. It's not instructions. Not prophecy. It's a letter. Addressed simply. To those who endure. You read it. Slowly. Eyes widening. Realizing that the conspiracy was never just about treasure, but about transfer. Knowledge that would ignite revolutions if revealed at the right moment. Knowledge of abuses, forgotten lineages, earthen truths. You feel your pulse drum. This changes everything. The scribe laughs, half mad, half in awe. Some will kill to keep it buried, and some will kill to free it. You reply. You fold the letters. Pocket them. Close the chest gently. The wardens will get through eventually. But now, you have more than objects. You have understanding. Something invisible, but not inert. Power hidden in simple words. Your torch flickers low. You turn to leave, and for the first time in days, you feel not hunted, but hunting. You and the scribe exit into starlit night. A cold breeze sweeps the mountainside. For now, the path is clear. Night settles like a cloak over the mountainside as you and the scribe stumble your way back toward lower ground. Guided only by stars and instinct, the wind whispers through pines, carrying a chilly bite. But you hardly notice. Not with the weight of that folded parchment inside your tunic, and the knowledge burning behind your eyes. You pause behind a boulder to rest, both of you breathing heavily. The scribe leans back, eyes wandering skyward. Do you think it's still out there? He asks. What? You murmur, adjusting your cloak. The other half, he says. The part they say didn't burn. The inheritance archive. If the letter mentions continuity, maybe it's more than just a record. Maybe it names. He trails off. Heirs. You finish. The word hangs between you, too daring, too world, cracking. If the church had suppressed evidence of living descendants, tied to power or wealth, well, that would explain centuries of silence. Historians still argue whether Templar persecutions were truly about heresy, or just about erasing competition for control, of wealth, of influence, of ideas. But tonight, you feel like you're walking the line between theory and proof. The letter you carry would be proof enough for someone patient, ruthless, and smart, or someone just like you. The scribe shifts, eyes glinting in the dark. So where does that leave us? We have a letter, some notes, a chest we couldn't carry, and a trail of corpses. You add. The wardens won't stop. Or let us. He pauses, then laughs softly. You're unnervingly calm about that. You shrug, half grinning. I've been nearly killed 5 times this week. Eventually, you either panic forever or lean in, breathe slower. Joke 1. You stand, ears sifting through the quiet. There's a safer path down the ridge. Just beyond that ridge line, you say, pointing east. Someone told you once how smugglers used it centuries ago. It feels right now. Moving downhill, you navigate loose stones and brush. There's a moment when the world shifts. The faint scent of firewood, the rumble of distant wheels. A road. You and the scribe step onto it, emerging from wildness like ghosts returning home. You walk for an hour under low-hanging stars, until you see it ahead. A roadside hostel, lit by torches and bustling with travelers. A jangling of harness and wheels announces a wagon pulling up to unload crates. You watch, unnoticed. Just another traveler in dust and shadow. Inside, the inn smells of cooked barley, wet wool, and horse. You choose a corner table, 2 bowls of stew, and try to act like you aren't harboring centuries, old truths in your coat. Across the room, near the stairs, a group of merchants chats quietly. One unfurls a map, tracing a path toward the Iberian coast. Your ears perk. The scribe sees your attention shift. You're thinking the port? He asks. Maybe. You murmur. If what's written in that letter sparks the right flame, even a small ember, others will come looking for us. A ship could buy distance. The scribe nods slowly. But we don't even know who to trust. We don't, you say? But maybe that's the point. This isn't about trust anymore. It's about momentum. And that's joke too, kind of. You head to the innkeeper to ask about rooms. He peers at you with a friendly enough expression. Full up, he says. Pilgrims on their way to the shrine. A lie. Maybe. But just as you're about to press, he nods toward the stable. There's hay and heat in the barn. Plenty of spare space for the quiet sort. You thank him and lead the scribe outside. Barns aren't comfortable, but they're less exposed. You find a cleanish corner and settle. The scribe curls beside a hay bale and dozes off almost immediately. You sit awake, eyes on the roof beams, listening. Eventually, you draw the parchment out again. You read it by candlelight. The ink is dark, as if written recently. But the date is centuries past. The words are careful. To those who endure, the truth was never meant to sleep. Some will bury it in flame, others in silence. But words pass through time like water through stone, slow and certain. Follow the rivers. Follow the dust. Blood remembers what ink forgets. You'll need to read this aloud one day. Maybe not now, but soon. You drift into sleep without meaning to, only to snap awake at footsteps. Torchlight flickers through barn slats. You tense, reaching for your knife. A low voice murmurs outside. Any travelers inside? You gesture silently to the scribe. He nods and slips behind a pile of crates. You press your shoulder against the wood, listening. Boots shuffle. Someone opens the barn door. Light spills in. You see two figures, hooded, silent. One holds a sigil, but not of the wardens. This one bears the twin circle. You stand slowly. You're late, you say softly. The hooded figure tilts their head. We kept pace, they reply. You had watchers. But we are watchers, too. They step inside fully. You glimpse silver hair and a sharp gaze beneath the hood. We need what you found, they say. The fragment. The key. You inhale slowly. Are you wardens? Or something older? We are what the wardens forgot. They answer. We guarded the Axis when it was just whispers and sand. They look over at the sleeping scribe. And we'd prefer you didn't die over this. You weigh your options. They don't seem hostile. But then, neither did that priest. Until he wasn't. You reach into your tunic and draw out the parchment. This is what matters, you say. The rest is lost now. Sealed. The hooded figure takes it reverently, studies it, then looks back at you. You did what many before you could not. You carried it far enough. To what end? You ask. They smile faintly. We have a plan. A lineage ready to emerge, not kings or warlords, but minds capable of changing what people accept as truth. You feel a stab of hope. Doubt. So what now? You go south, they say. Through the mountain pass, back toward the coast. And then you disappear, they say. You've played your part. The rest must be done in shadow. You bristle. You think I'll just hand it off and vanish. A quiet nod. Yes. Because you understand better than most. Some stories don't need a hero at the end. That one lands deeper than you expect. The hooded figure steps back, gives a subtle gesture. The other silently closes the parchment in a waxed satchel. Then, just as silently, they leave. With no threat, no dagger, no betrayal. Simpler than you'd imagined. More complex than you could guess. You let out a breath you didn't realize you'd held. In the half-light, you hear the scribe stir. He sits up, blinking. What happened? You nod toward the door. We passed the fire to someone else, you say. He processes that. Then, so what now? You stretch your shoulders, feeling the ache of weeks of choices. Now, you say, we walk. You do. Up before dawn, following the cool river path south. The stars slowly fade. Birds warm their voices. Your steps feel lighter, even without resolution. Because not every door has to stay open forever. Some are meant to be carefully closed, sealed with patience and dust. And as you walk, you smile at the quiet realization settling beneath your ribs. You've earned the right to keep secrets, not for power, but for peace. Joke 3 comes easily. If anyone asks, we're just traveling herb collectors. For coughs, curses, and church cover-ups. Days pass quietly now. The road south becomes a ribbon of packed dirt, wound between grassy hills and cut through valleys where birch trees tremble in the morning light. With the weight of the manuscript lifted, even your bones feel lighter, looser. You still keep the bone key close. It's part memory, part reminder of what you carried, what you didn't. The scribe travels beside you, adopting a tuneless humming whenever the silence grows too long. It's comforting, in its way. He's still young. Maybe this journey will bend him toward caution, or resilience, or maybe he'll keep being the kind of person who hums to fight the quiet. You hope for the latter. The world needs more honest noise. On the 5th evening, fog rolls in early, settling like milk over the hills. You find shelter in a tiny hamlet, just 3 homes and a watchtower built of rough river stone. The locals eye you both with curiosity, but not suspicion. Travelers are less threatening when they're walking away from something. You don't give names, and no one asks. You sit by a hearth that night, eating pottage and flatbread, listening to the village elder share a local story about a giant snail whose shell held secrets of the sky. Every full moon, he says, if you listen by the river, you can hear him growing. The scribe eats this up. You file it mentally under best conspiracy ever, and make a note to tell it someday as a bedtime story. Joke 1. By the time you reach the coast, the weather's warmed, gull cries ride salt wind, and your face feels something like human again after weeks of hard travel. You pause before the docks, watching fishermen unload crates. Small ships bob lazily in the tide, ropes creaking like old bones. Somewhere among them, passage and anonymity. You slip into the crowd, cloak pulled over your brow. The scribe speaks quietly beside you. You don't really think it's over, do you? It's not a question. No, you say, but it's okay to rest in the in-betweens. Even revolutions take naps. That's terrible philosophy, he mutters, but he grins. Joke 2. You spend the afternoon negotiating with a shipmaster. A sturdy woman with sharp eyes and sharper words. She agrees to take you both toward the archipelagos, where no church agent will bother whispering your name. Passage is cheap if you work. Hard, but honest. As dusk falls, you board. Below deck, your berth is a hammock slung between 2 beams. The scribe's is opposite. You sway gently with the tide. That night, the gentle push and pull of the sea cradles your breathing. The scribe sleeps soundly, wrapped in an old wool blanket. You stay half awake, listening to the low hum of sailors trading stories on deck. Many involve storm omens, ship wraiths, and sea serpents, and you smile. A world so drenched in stories needs them more than ever. Just before sleep truly takes you, a thought slips in like a whispered promise. Maybe this is enough. Not triumph or total justice, but motion, truth in unseen circulation. And your part was not in dying for it, but in carrying the flame just far enough so others could catch it. You drift off. Half dreaming, you see corridors lined with ancient stone, torches flickering. A locked door waits. You reach into your cloak for the bone key. When you turn it, the door opens, not with a metallic groan, but a wash of light. On the other side is nothing frightening, only sky, open, endless, bright. 300-word wind down now as you settle more deeply into sleep. Let the edges of this medieval world dissolve into something soft, soporific. The stone walls become imagined, shrinking to distant whispers. the secret orders and hidden ink fade into comfort. Not because they weren't real, but because your journey through them was careful, courageous, complete for now. Feel the weight of your own blanket, not a knight's cloak or a scholar's robe, just fabric keeping you warm. Breathe in through your nose, as if you're inhaling sea air off that unchanged coast, and let it out slowly, like a tide drawing back. Think of every door you've walked through in life, not just the literal ones, but those hinge moments. Decisions, discoveries, maybe even mistakes. Let each one become just a soft footstep behind you now, leading you here to this moment of stillness. A gentle close of the day. You've earned the quiet. You've walked through symbols and storms of your own. And now, there's nothing chasing you. Nothing to solve. Just this tender quiet, where the only task is to drift deeper, softer, resting in the layers of all you've already understood, and all you don't need to understand right now. Let your mind sink like a coin into deep water, slower, slower, until there's only peace. Let the sound of your breath become the only river you follow now.